Silence is a form of power, not because it makes you invisible, but because it makes you untouchable. In a world that demands constant explanation, silence feels like rebellion. We are taught to clarify ourselves, to justify our choices, to defend our boundaries, to narrate our pain so that others feel comfortable with it. The moment something goes wrong, the first instinct is to speak, to post, to respond, to prove, to explain who we are and why we did what we did. But the ancient philosophers would have found this strange. Epictetus once warned that we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about them. What he did not say directly, but clearly implied, is that many of these judgments are spoken out loud too quickly. We speak before we understand, we react before we reflect, and in doing so, we give away something precious, our power. Silence is not weakness. Silence is restraint, and restraint is the foundation of inner strength. The person who can remain silent when provoked has already won half the battle, not because the other person is defeated, but because the self has not been conquered. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike the one who performed the injury. Silence is often the clearest way to do that. Think about how often people speak in order to soothe their own anxiety. They explain themselves not because the explanation is needed, but because the silence feels unbearable. Silence creates a space where ego has nothing to hide behind, and that is uncomfortable. So we fill the space with words, arguments, stories, excuses, but every unnecessary word is a small surrender. When you rush to explain yourself, you place your inner state in the hands of others. You imply that their understanding is required for your peace. You turn their approval into a condition for your calm. This is the opposite of Stoic freedom. The Stoics believed that true freedom begins where dependence ends. If your tranquility depends on being understood, agreed with, or validated, then you are not free. You are managed by the opinions of strangers. Silence breaks that dependency. There is a quiet confidence in the person who does not rush to correct misunderstandings. Not because misunderstandings are good, but because not all misunderstandings are worth your energy. Some people are not confused. They are committed to misunderstanding you. Words will not save you there. Silence, however, protects you. Seneca warned against scattering one's life in trivial matters. Endless explanations are one of those trivialities. They consume attention, emotional energy, and time while offering nothing in return. You do not owe everyone access to your inner reasoning. You do not owe the world a full account of your values. Power is choosing where your voice belongs. Modern culture rewards noise. The loudest voice wins the room, the fastest response gets attention, the most dramatic reaction spreads the furthest. But this is not strength, it is exposure. The louder you are, the easier you are to manipulate. The quieter you become, the harder it is for the world to pull your strings. Silence forces others to reveal themselves. When you do not rush to speak, the other person continues talking. And in doing so, they often expose their intentions, insecurities, and motives. Silence listens. Words interrupt. This does not mean withdrawal from life. It means engagement without submission. It means choosing presence over performance. The disciplined mind does not speak to impress. It speaks to be precise. And often, precision requires waiting. There is also a deeper reason silence is powerful. It reconnects you with yourself. When you stop explaining, defending, and narrating your life, you begin to observe it. You notice your impulses, your need to be seen, your fear of being misjudged. In silence, these patterns become visible, and what becomes visible can be mastered. The Stoics trained themselves daily to pause between stimulus and response. That pause is silence, and in that silence lives choice. You do not need to announce your growth. You do not need to justify your boundaries. You do not need to explain your discipline to those who benefit from your lack of it. Let your life speak where words are unnecessary. Silence is not absence, it is control. And control, according to the Stoics, is the closest thing to power a human being can possess. Silence becomes even more powerful when you realize how rarely it is practiced with intention. Most people are silent out of fear. They withhold their voice because they feel small, uncertain, or intimidated. That kind of silence is heavy and resentful. It stores frustration instead of wisdom. But Stoic silence is different. It is chosen, not imposed. Chosen silence is an act of sovereignty. When you choose not to respond immediately, you reclaim authorship over your inner life. You remind yourself that not every stimulus deserves a reaction. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you always have the option of having no opinion. That sentence is far more radical than it appears. It means you are not obligated to take part in every conflict, every debate, every emotional invitation that comes your way. Most people exhaust themselves by accepting all invitations. Arguments, accusations, gossip, outrage. These are calls for participation. Silence is declining the invitation. Declining is a form of strength when the invitation leads nowhere. Notice how often people speak not to communicate truth, but to discharge emotion. Anger wants an outlet. Insecurity wants reassurance. Ego wants recognition. When you respond impulsively, you become a tool for someone else's emotional regulation. Their unrest becomes your burden. Stoicism teaches the opposite posture. Contain yourself first. Let the storm pass inside before addressing anything outside. Silence is the container that makes this possible. Epictetus emphasized that you must first learn to keep your own counsel. If you cannot sit with your thoughts without broadcasting them, you have not mastered them. The urge to speak often reveals unfinished thinking. Silence allows thoughts to ripen. Immature ideas spoken too early weaken your authority. This is why truly grounded individuals often speak less, not more. They are not hoarding words, they are refining them. There is also a strategic dimension to silence. In conflicts, the first person to lose emotional control usually reveals their weakest position. Silence denies that exposure. It keeps your inner state opaque, and opacity protects leverage. The Stoics were not naive about human behavior. They understood power dynamics. They knew that visibility invites interference. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to provoke. Silence disrupts predictability. This is especially relevant in relationships. Over-explaining your feelings can feel honest, but it can also create dependency. When you narrate every emotional fluctuation, you teach others to monitor and manage you. When you remain composed and reserved, you communicate stability. Stability commands respect more than disclosure ever will. This does not mean emotional repression. It means emotional governance. A governed mind does not leak. Silence also disciplines desire. When you stop announcing your plans, you stop seeking premature validation. Many goals fail not because they are difficult, but because they are spoken too soon. The applause comes before the effort, and motivation dissolves. The Stoics understood that virtue is internal. It does not require witnesses. Work in silence, let results speak. There is a quiet dignity in refusing to perform your character for an audience. The world pressures you to explain your values, to label yourself, to declare your stance. But character is revealed under pressure, not in statements. Silence preserves that testing ground. Consider how often you feel misunderstood. The instinct is to clarify, to correct the narrative. But some narratives are not yours to control. Trying to control them only tightens their grip on you. Silence loosens it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that people will think and say whatever aligns with their nature. You cannot reprogram that with words, but you can remain unmoved by it. Silence is the posture of someone who trusts their own alignment. When your actions are congruent with your values, you do not need constant verbal reinforcement. You know who you are. That knowledge stabilizes you more than any external agreement ever could. The modern world confuses expression with authenticity, but authenticity without discipline is just exposure. The Stoics aimed for something higher, integrity. Integrity does not shout, it holds, and holding requires silence. Silence is not retreat, it is consolidation. It is the space where your principles harden into structure, where impulse gives way to intention. Without silence, there is no internal architecture, only reaction. There comes a point where silence is no longer just a personal discipline, but a moral stance. It becomes the line between dignity and self-betrayal. Many people speak not because truth demands it, but because discomfort does. Silence in these moments is the refusal to betray your inner order for the sake of temporary relief. The Stoics believed that character is revealed when pressure is applied. Silence under pressure is one of the clearest indicators of inner alignment. When insulted, blamed, or misunderstood, the untrained mind rushes to restore its image. The trained mind asks a different question. Does this require my response? Often the answer is no. Epictetus reminded his students that if someone speaks ill of you, they may be telling the truth, or they may be revealing their own confusion. In either case, your peace does not improve by arguing. Silence preserves clarity. Words, when misused, entangle you in narratives that were never yours to begin with. There is also a profound humility in silence. It accepts the limits of control. You cannot manage every perception. You cannot correct every falsehood. You cannot guide every mind. Silence acknowledges this without resentment. It is not passive, it is realistic. This realism is where strength lives. Modern culture treats response as obligation. Notifications demand immediacy. Opinions demand replies. Silence is interpreted as weakness, guilt, or defeat. But this interpretation reveals the fragility of the observer, not the silence of the one who withholds. The Stoics did not measure strength by volume. They measured it by endurance. Endurance is the ability to remain steady when the world tries to pull you out of position. Silence helps you hold that position. It prevents you from being dragged into cycles of reaction that erode your center. There is a difference between being unheard and being unshaken. Silence aims for the latter. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. Scarcity creates gravity. This is true not only socially but internally. When you limit speech, you also limit mental noise. The mind becomes clearer, more deliberate. Thoughts slow down. Judgments sharpen. Silence teaches patience, not the patience of waiting, but the patience of discernment. Discernment is the Stoic skill of choosing what matters. And what matters is rarely urgent. Urgency is often manufactured by emotion. Silence dissolves that illusion. It creates space to see whether something is truly worth your energy or merely loud. Consider how many regrets are born from words spoken too soon, apologies that became unnecessary, arguments that escalated, confessions that weakened boundaries. Silence prevents these errors not by suppression, but by timing. Timing is wisdom in motion. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that he would soon be dead, as would everyone else involved in the conflict of the moment. This was not morbid, it was clarifying. Silence becomes easier when you adopt a long view. From that perspective, most provocations shrink. Most explanations lose relevance. Silence aligns you with what endures. There is also a spiritual dimension to silence, even in a secular Stoic sense. Silence returns you to observation. You become a witness to your own impulses rather than their servant. This separation is where freedom begins. Freedom is not the ability to say anything at any time. It is the ability to choose not to. The world is full of people who cannot stop speaking. That is not freedom, that is compulsion. Silence interrupts compulsion. And once compulsion is interrupted, agency emerges. You are no longer dragged by mood or momentum. You act or do not act by principle. This is why silence is often misunderstood. It does not announce itself, it does not demand recognition. It simply holds the line, and holding the line is harder than speaking. Silence reaches its highest form when it is no longer reactive, strategic, or defensive, but rooted in self-trust. At that stage, you are not withholding words to prove a point or gain advantage. You are quiet because there is nothing left to prove. This is the silence of completion. The Stoics called this inner sufficiency, a state where your sense of worth is no longer negotiated through dialogue with the world. You act according to reason. You accept outcomes without protest, and you let others draw their own conclusions. Silence becomes the natural expression of that posture. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Constant explanation stains the mind with anxiety about perception. Silence, practiced over time, purifies intention. You begin to act without rehearsing how it will be interpreted. You live, not perform. This is where true power emerges. Power is often imagined as dominance, persuasion, or control over others. But the Stoics aimed for a quieter form, self-mastery, the ability to remain internally ordered regardless of external disorder. Silence is one of its sharpest tools. When you stop defending yourself unnecessarily, something unexpected happens. You recover energy. Mental space opens. Attention returns inward. You realize how much of your life was spent in conversations that did not deserve you. Silence returns that time. It also clarifies your voice. Paradoxically, those who practice silence speak more truthfully when they do speak. They are not rushed. They are not reactive. Their words emerge from alignment, not impulse. This is why few words, spoken at the right time, can outweigh entire arguments. Let your speech be rare and it will be respected. The Stoics were deeply concerned with legacy, not fame, but the imprint of character. They believed that a life well lived would be legible through action alone. Silence supports this belief. It allows behavior to become the message. You do not need to explain your discipline. It shows. You do not need to announce your values. They surface. You do not need to justify your boundaries. They stand. Silence removes the noise that obscures these signals. There will be moments when speaking is necessary. Stoicism is not mutinous. Justice sometimes requires words. Courage sometimes demands protest. Wisdom knows the difference. Silence teaches that difference by default. When silence is your baseline, speech becomes intentional rather than habitual. This is the discipline. The modern world equates visibility with existence. But you existed long before you were seen. Silence reconnects you with that truth. It reminds you that your worth is not a public vote. And once you internalize that, you become difficult to manipulate, difficult to provoke, and impossible to own. Silence is not absence of strength. It is strength that does not beg to be witnessed. If this reflection resonated with you, carry it into your day. Observe how often you feel the urge to explain. Pause. Ask whether the explanation serves reason or ego. Choose accordingly. And if you want to continue exploring how ancient philosophy applies to modern inner battles, stay with this channel. There is more to uncover. Silence, practiced daily, becomes power.